Okay, so today we're going to talk about polynomials, what they are, and a couple characteristics about them. So first of all, what is a polynomial? It is an expression of one or more algebraic terms, especially the sum of several terms that contain different powers and the same variable. So that's a lot of words right there. So what does that mean? So an expression is just something that doesn't have an equal sign. So something where it doesn't equal 0 or equal 7 that you're kind of used to seeing, that's called an equation. So an expression of one or more algebraic terms. So an algebraic term is just something that has a number, a letter, or a variable. So you might have 12x cubed. This is a term. So a polynomial is either one or more algebraic terms basically being added or subtracted together. So plus 2x minus 5, right? This is an expression because there's no equal sign. We have different variable exponents. So this is to the third, this is technically to the first, and they're being added or subtracted. So you've actually worked with these a little bit throughout middle school. So one thing that's important about polynomials is they need to be written in something called standard form. So what is standard form? This is when the terms are written with the largest exponent first going down to the smallest. So largest exponent to the smallest. So exponents are what's in the corner up here behind the variable. So another example of that would be, let's say 2x to the fifth plus 3x squared minus x plus 2, right? That's an expression with different terms added and subtracted. The first term has a 5, second term has a 2. This is technically a 1, and this is none. So largest exponent to smallest. Now, talking about the different characteristics or the different things that make up an expression, you've probably heard these before: term, constant, coefficient. So we're going to use this example to define them and kind of pull them out. So a term is a number or variable, or a number and a variable together. And when they're together, that means they're being multiplied together. So a number and variable multiplied. So for example, if I look up here, 4x squared, if you look, there's nothing between the two of them. That's multiplication holding them together. So number and variable, that is a term. So one example is 4x squared. Another example of a term is this 3x. Now you have to be careful because this minus sign in front of it, that minus is actually attached to the 3x. So negative 3x is a term. And then you can also have a term that's just a number or variable. So this is just a number, that is still a term. So pretty much all the individual parts of an expression are terms. Now, a constant is a fixed value, or in other words, a number, number without a variable. So if I look at the example above, I'm looking for anything that doesn't have a variable. So 5 is the only thing without. So 5 is our constant. That means it doesn't change. A coefficient is a number in front of a variable. Being multiplied. So number in front of a variable being multiplied. So again, if I look at these examples, first of all, it has to be the number in front of a variable. So I'm looking for anything that has a variable. So here, this is a variable. It's being multiplied together, and the number in front is 4. So I have a coefficient of 4. But I also have other variables in here. So this is an x, right? And the number in front is a negative 3. So I also have negative 3 as a coefficient. So you can have more than one coefficient. Now, the leading coefficient, this is a very specific one. This is the coefficient that leads the entire expression, but this is the most important part when the expression is in standard form. So we want to make sure we add that in there. When in standard form, the coefficient of the leading term. So this is just abbreviation for coefficient. So if I look, this is in fact in standard form, 4x squared minus 3x plus 5. So the leading term, the leading coefficient is 4. Now, those are all definitions you've probably heard before. We're just recapping. Here, these are probably going to be new. So what we're going to learn how to do next is classify a polynomial by term and by degree. So first of all, term, remember, those are the individual components. So we're just counting up how many there are. So how many terms are there? And we have these very specific names for certain terms. So monomial, mono is the prefix for one. So this just means whenever there's only one term. So an example of one term, 4x squared. This is a polynomial. There's only one term, so we call it monomial. Bi is a prefix for two, so two terms. So an example of a polynomial with two terms might be 3x squared minus 5, right? I have term 1, term 2, so 1 and 2, so it is a binomial. Tri means 3, so 3 terms. So an example of 3 terms might be 4x squared minus 3x plus 2. We have our first term, our second term, our third term. Remember, terms are broken up by addition and subtraction, so we're just kind of looking for the breaks between symbols, right? 1, 2, 3, that's a trinomial. Now, anything bigger than 3 terms, we call it a polynomial. Poly means many, so that's anything greater than 3 for us. That's what we'll use. There's technically names for 4, 5, 6, and so on, but we don't need to know that. So basically 4 or more. So let's say 5x to the 4th minus 2x cubed plus 7x minus 3. 1 term, 2 term, 3 term, 4 terms. This is a polynomial. So that's counting how many items you have. I like to think of terms as items. Next, we're going to classify by degree. Now, degrees are also called your exponents. And so when we're looking at classifying by degree, we're looking for the largest one. There's a lot of exponents inside of a polynomial. So like if you look at this one, there's 1, 2, 3. So when we're looking for classifying by degrees, we're looking at the largest exponent. So a constant means it doesn't change. That means we have no variable, which means no exponent. So 5. This is like something, this is technically a polynomial that has a term, but there's no exponent, so it's a constant. Something is called linear when it has a power of 1 or to the first degree. So we could say like 3x plus 1. Now this variable, you don't see it. We never write in the exponent of 1. So if you don't see an exponent, it's always 1. So this would be a linear polynomial. Quadratic means 2. And so we have an exponent of 2 as our largest. So if you look here, we actually have 2 exponents, a 2 and a 1, but the largest is 2, so we would call this quadratic. So with cubic means to the 3rd degree. So in this case, we would have something of an exponent with a 3. So one thing I want to mention is that a lot of times things aren't going to be in standard form. So something to the cubic degree could also look like this. So even though like that 2 is in front, that's not the largest exponent. The largest exponent is the 3, and so that is why it's to the 3rd degree. So again, not everything is in standard form to start, so we want to make sure we're looking throughout the entire polynomial. Quartic, think like quarter, so 4th degree. And that is going to be, again, like 2x to the 4th minus 3x squared plus 5, maybe, right? So 4th is the largest, right? 4th. And then anything greater than 5, or a 4, so greater than or equal to 5, we're just going to call 5th degree, 6th degree, 7th degree. So there are names for it, but I just am not going to make you guys memorize that. So you just literally call it by whatever the number is, 5th, 6th, 7th, and so on. So what we're going to do is get into some examples on making sure, one, we know how to write something in standard form, classify by degree, classify by term, identify the coefficients, and then leading coefficient. So this first one, it is not in standard form. So remember, standard form is largest to smallest. So if I look, the largest exponent is to the 4th, so that term needs to go first. Next is to the 2nd, so that minus 8a squared is going to come down, and then 4a is last. So I just rewrote it, largest to smallest. The largest degree is to the 4th. So if I classify by degree, 4th degree is called quartic. So this is a quartic. And then to classify by term, there are 1, 2, 3 terms. So it is a quartic trinomial. And sorry, I put -4. This is a plus because it was positive 4a. So quartic trinomial, the coefficients, remember a coefficient is something that is in front of a variable. So 5 is in front of a variable, -8 is in front of a variable, and 4 is in front of a variable. So those are all the coefficients, and the leading coefficient would be 5 because it's leading when in standard form. Example 2. So on this one, this is literally by itself. So to put in standard form, it already is technically, so you can just rewrite it. The degree, this is the one that usually confuses people. Remember, degrees have to have a variable, and if there is no variable, it is called constant. So this is a constant. And then we define by the number of terms. Well, there's only one item, so one term, so monomial. So it is a constant monomial. Coefficients have to have variables. So if you look, no variable, no coefficient. And if there's no coefficients, there's no leading coefficient. So sometimes the answer can be none because it doesn't exist in that type of polynomial. All right, so next one, put in standard form. So if I look, 3, 2, it's already in standard form, so I'll just write it as is. So 7z squared. The degree, so the largest degree is the 3, so 3rd degree is cubic. The number of terms that we have are 2, so 2 is a binomial, so cubic binomial. Coefficients are in front of variables, so we have a 6 and we have a 7. And then the leading coefficient is the one directly out in front when in standard form, and that is a 6. So what I want you guys to do is you are going to do problem number 1 on your own. So pause the video now because I'm going to go right into answering it, but I want you to pause it, try it on your own, and then hit play and see how you did on it and see what you got right. So standard form, if I look, it's already in standard form, largest exponent to smallest. The degree, the largest one is to the 2nd, so it is a quadratic. So it is a quadratic. And the term, how many terms there are? There are 2, so it is a binomial. Coefficients, 6 and -12. Leading coefficient is 6. All right. So these two we're actually going to work on in class together. I'm going to go over these in class. I'll do this one together and have you try this try on your own in class. So leave these two blank and then we'll review with these tomorrow.